14 days before Christmas, I overheard my son and his wife planning to take everything I had left, my house, my savings, my name. They thought I was asleep. I wasn't. And when my son called on December 24th asking where I was, I told him to check the kitchen drawer. What he found in that envelope ended his plan permanently. My wife passed in March. Eleanor. 41 years. She was a retired school librarian who still read 2 books a week until the day she couldn't anymore. After she died, the house felt like a building I was just occupying. I rattled around in it. 6 rooms, 3 of them empty now that the kids were grown and gone. My son called me 2 weeks after the funeral. He said he and his wife wanted to move in temporarily, help out around the house, keep me company. I said yes because I was 67 years old and I had just buried the person who made the house feel like home, and I didn't want to rattle anymore. He arrived in April with a moving truck. I'm a retired civil engineer. I spent 38 years designing infrastructure, bridges, drainage systems, load-bearing calculations. I know how structures work. I know how things fail. I did not apply that knowledge to my own family. That was my first mistake. They settled in quickly. My son worked remotely. His wife, I'll call her what she was, my daughter-in-law, had recently left her job at a property management company. She said she was taking time off. Looking back, she was managing a different kind of property. Mine. By summer, I noticed small things. The filing cabinet in my office had been opened. I could tell because I keep the middle drawer slightly off-center by habit, and it wasn't. The combination to my small safe, Eleanor's birthday, I found it written on a yellow sticky note tucked behind a picture frame in the hallway. I told myself I must have done it and forgotten. I believed that for exactly 3 weeks. October brought the first hard cold snap. I came downstairs before 6 one morning, earlier than usual because my back had been bothering me. The kitchen light was already on. My daughter-in-law was at the table with her laptop open, a phone propped against the fruit bowl, speaker on low. I stood in the hallway and listened. The voice on the phone was a man's. Professional cadence. She was calling him doctor. The cognitive impairment documentation covers the past 8 months, she said. We have his prescription records, the incident reports I typed up, and the statement from the neighbor. What neighbor? The man asked. I drafted it. He'll sign it. A pause. Then, and the property itself, house is in his name only, but once the guardianship goes through, we control disposition. We sell, pay off our debts, split what's left. I stood in the hallway. My left hand found the wall. I pressed my palm flat against the plaster. My right hand was holding my coffee mug, and I had to focus, genuinely focus, to keep from dropping it. I set it down on the small table by the coat rack, set it down very carefully, walked back upstairs, sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. I did not sleep again that night. I did the math instead. House value, approximately $520,000 based on recent comps in the neighborhood. My son and his wife had paid nothing in rent since April. Market rate for a home this size in suburban Ohio, I'd looked it up once, idly, ran around $1,800 or $1,800 a month. 8 months. $14,400 they owed me and hadn't paid, but they weren't planning to pay. They were planning to take the whole thing. Fabricated medical records. They had written a fake neighbor's statement. They had found a doctor, or someone calling himself a doctor, who was willing to declare me incompetent without ever having met me. I am not a man who cries easily. I sat on the edge of my bed, and I felt something crack open in my chest that I haven't quite been able to describe since. Not grief exactly. Grief, I knew. This was different. This was the particular cold discovering that something you built, not a bridge, not a drainage system, but a relationship, a family, had been load-bearing a lie for longer than you knew. At 5:30, I dressed and drove to a 24-hour diner 20 minutes away. I ordered coffee and eggs. I didn't eat and opened the Notes app on my phone and began writing. I wrote everything I had heard, word for word, time-stamped. Then I wrote a list of everything I knew. Then I wrote a list of everything I needed to find out. By 7, I had a plan. It was rough, but it was a plan. I drove back, parked down the street, watched my son's car in the driveway. At 8:40, he pulled out. She left at 9:15. I went inside. I went to my own filing cabinet first. The long-term care insurance policy was still there. So was Eleanor's death certificate. The deed to the house, sole ownership, my name, was in the same folder where I'd kept it for 19 years. I photographed every page with my phone and uploaded them to a cloud account I'd created that morning at the diner. Different email. Password they'd never guess. I'd used Eleanor's mother's maiden name and a set of numbers from a bridge specification I'd memorized in 1989. Then I went to the recycling bin in the garage. It took me 12 minutes to find what I was looking for: a crumpled printout, partially torn, Ohio probate court forms, a guardianship petition, partially completed, my name at the top, my son's name below it as proposed guardian, in the margin, handwritten, Dr. Alton Marsh, signature confirmed, ready to file after Christmas. I sat on an overturned storage bin in my own garage, in the cold, reading my son's handwriting in the margin of a document designed to strip me of my legal autonomy. That was when the grief finished and the engineering started. I straightened the document, photographed every page, returned it exactly as I'd found it. That afternoon, I drove to a notary public in a town 30 minutes east. I'd found her through the Ohio State Bar's referral service. Her name was Patricia Osei, and she had 20 years of experience in estate and property law. I spread the photographs across her desk. She read without speaking. When she finished, she looked at me over her reading glasses. "This petition hasn't been filed yet," she said. "No, they're planning Christmas as the ambush point. Smart. Courts are backed up after the holidays. By the time anyone reviewed it, they'd have had weeks of control. I need to sell the house before the petition is filed." She didn't hesitate. Under Ohio law, you retain full right to convey property until a court formally adjudicates incompetency. A petition is not a ruling. You are still the sole owner, and you can sell. She gave me the name of a real estate attorney who handled accelerated closings. She also referred me to a small private office, 2 attorneys, no support staff, very discreet, that specialized in contested guardianship cases. I called both from the parking lot. The real estate attorney, whose name was Gordon Kay, answered on the second ring. I told him I needed to sell a house in 14 days. He was quiet for a moment. "That's aggressive," he said. "I know. Can it be done? If the title is clean and you're motivated, yes. I have 2 cash buyers who close fast. They pay a small discount for speed." "How small?" 5 to 10% below market." "Fine." He had a showing scheduled by the next morning. I drove home. They were both there when I arrived. My son was at the kitchen table with his laptop. She was watching something on her phone with earbuds in. I said I'd been running errands, said I was tired from a bad night. My son said I looked pale. I told him I'd been thinking about Christmas, said I hoped we could make it a real celebration. He smiled and said of course. We'd have people over, the Murphys from down the street, his college friends, a full house. I smiled back. That night, lying in the dark, I heard them through the wall. She was talking about the petition timeline. He said they should wait until after Christmas dinner. Get me in a good mood first. She said that was smarter. More cooperative. Cooperative. That word. I lay there and let it settle. The showing happened the next day while I told them I was at a doctor's appointment, which was partially true, because I had also scheduled a genuine appointment with my own physician. I needed documented proof of my cognitive function. Dr. Renata Home had been my primary care doctor for 11 years. She ran a full assessment, memory tests, orientation tests, executive function screening. She wrote her findings in a formal letter on clinic letterhead and signed it. Superior cognitive function for patient's age. No evidence of confusion, impairment, or decline. I got 2 more of those letters. One from a neurologist I found through my insurance network. One from a geriatric psychiatrist a colleague had recommended years ago for a different reason. 3 independent doctors. 3 signed letters, all dated within the week before Christmas. Gordon Kay called on December 19th. A cash buyer from Michigan and made an offer, $487,000, slightly below market. Closing on December 22nd. Wire transfer within 22nd. Wire transfer within 24 hours of closing. I accepted. The night before closing, I did two things. First, I opened my home safe and removed my real will. Everything to charity, 3 organizations Eleanor had supported, plus my alma mater's engineering scholarship fund. That document I moved to my safety deposit box at a credit union branch, account my son didn't know existed. In its place, I put something I'd typed the week before on an old typewriter I keep in the basement. A will, dated 3 years prior, deliberately aged with a cold cup of coffee and a careful hand. Leaving everything, house, savings, personal property, to my son. I placed it where it was visible the moment anyone opened the safe. Let him find it. Let him think the groundwork was already done. Then I drove to a UPS store and shipped 3 boxes to a storage unit I'd rented under my own name in Columbus. The boxes contained Eleanor's jewelry, my personal documents, the photographs I couldn't replace, and 2 small things she'd left me that I'm not going to describe here because they're not relevant to this story, and they're mine. I signed closing documents on December 22nd. Gordon Shee shook my hand across the conference table and said he'd never seen a cleaner fast close. The wire transfer hit my new account, opened at a credit union in Westerville, no connection to any account my son could access. On the morning of December 23rd, $487,000. That evening I made dinner, pot roast, my son's favorite since he was 12. I set the table, we ate. He talked about the Christmas guest list. She talked about a recipe she wanted to try. I listened and nodded and passed the bread. At 10:30 they went upstairs. I sat at the kitchen table for a while. Then I packed 2 bags, packed them slowly, the way you do when you're paying attention to everything for the last time. Clothes, medications, my laptop, a framed photograph of Eleanor I'd kept on my nightstand. I wrote a note. Put it in an envelope. Addressed it to my son in clear block letters. Put it in the kitchen drawer, the junk drawer, the one he opened 3 times a day for batteries and take-out menus and rubber bands. On the envelope I wrote, "Open this. Read everything." Inside was a copy of the purchase agreement, signed, notarized, dated December 22nd, and beneath it 1 sentence in my own handwriting, "The house is gone. So is the plan." I carried my bags to my car at 5:45 in the morning. Drove out of the neighborhood I had lived in for 19 years. Did not look in the rearview mirror until I was on the highway. I had booked a room at a Hampton Inn in Columbus under my own name because I had nothing to hide. Checked in at 7. Set my bags down. Stood at the window looking at the parking lot. It was quiet. That's what I remember most. After 8 months of listening through walls and sleeping lightly and reading faces at the dinner table, the quiet felt like something physical, like pressure releasing. My phone was on. I knew what was coming. At 12:47, Christmas Eve, it rang. My son. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. Dad. His voice had that forced calm that people use when they're working very hard not to sound panicked. Where are you? We were going to start dinner early. I went to get you and your room is. Check the kitchen drawer, I said. The junk drawer. There's an envelope with your name on it. Silence. Then what? Go read it. Then call me back if you'd like. I hung up. I sat in the hotel chair and waited. 7 minutes. That's how long it took. He didn't call back. He came on the line in a completely different register. That flatness that isn't calm at all. It's just what rage sounds like when someone is trying to keep it inside. You sold the house. Yes. You can't. Dad, you didn't even. A breath. Then her voice in the background, sharp and rising. Then him, quieter, away from the phone. Then back. Dad, something is wrong with you. You weren't thinking clearly. We can fix this. Come home, Will. There's no home to come to, I said. That's the point. You were manipulated. Someone took advantage of you. We can contest the sale. We can prove. Prove what? That I'm incompetent? I kept my voice level, because I have a letter from Dr. Holm dated December 18th, a neurological evaluation dated December 19th, and a geriatric assessment dated December 20th, All three say the same thing. Would you like me to read them to you? The silence that followed had a different quality. Who told you? It wasn't a question anymore. No one told me anything. I heard you, October. Early morning. You were on the phone with someone you were calling doctor. You mentioned incident reports you typed yourself and a neighbor's statement you drafted. You mentioned selling the house to pay off debt. Nothing. I've been recording since November, I said. Audio on my phone. Ohio is a one-party consent state. Everything is legal. Everything is saved and backed up. A sound from his end, difficult to describe. Something between a word and not a word. I'm going to give you some advice, I said. Don't file the petition. Dr. Alton Marsh, whoever he is, signed documents without ever examining me. That's fraud. If that petition goes anywhere near a courthouse, I will hand everything I have to a prosecutor and let them do what they'd like with it. My son didn't speak for a long time. When he did, his voice had changed again. Smaller. Dad, Merry Christmas, I said, and ended the call. I sat in the hotel room for an hour, ordered room service, ate it looking out at a grey Ohio afternoon, the kind of flat December sky that feels like the year is just holding its breath before ending. My phone showed 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Then 2 texts from the same number. I didn't read them. I opened my laptop and began writing a document, every date, every conversation, every piece of evidence, time-stamped, organized. My attorney, a woman named Sandra Kwan, whom I'd retained after meeting with the contested guardianship specialists, needed the full picture by the week after Christmas. That night, I called my younger sister in Tucson. She was the first person I'd told. She cried. I didn't. We talked for 2 hours about Eleanor, about the kids when they were small, about what happened to families when money got in the way of people who already had reasons to be difficult. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not happy, exactly, but located, like I knew where I was. Sandra filed our counterposition in the first week of January. My son and his wife, through a lawyer named Perry Whitfield, had submitted the guardianship petition on December 26th. One day after Christmas, 2 days after they found the envelope in the drawer, Judge Anita Cow presided over the initial hearing on January 14th. Sandra had organized our evidence into a folder that was, in my professional opinion, architecturally sound. The 3 physician evaluations, the audio recordings from November and December, the original guardianship petition documents retrieved from my own recycling bin, the proof that Dr. Alton Marsh's license had been suspended 18 months earlier for falsifying patient records in a separate case. Sandra's investigator found that in 4 days, Perry Whitfield attempted to argue that my hasty sale of the house was itself evidence of impaired judgment. Judge Cowell let him finish, then asked him to explain how a man who had simultaneously retained legal counsel, secured 3 independent medical evaluations, documented a conspiracy on his own initiative, and executed a lawful real estate transaction, could be considered impaired. Whitfield did not have a good answer. Motion denied, Judge Cowell said. The court finds no basis for guardianship. The petitioner's reliance on documentation from a medical professional whose license was suspended prior to the signing of said documents is, to put it plainly, counselor, a significant problem. She looked at Whitfield over the top of her reading glasses in a way that reminded me of Patricia O'Shea. The court is referring the matter of Dr. Marsh's involvement to the county prosecutor's office for review. In the hallway afterward, Sandra said, "That went about as well as it could have gone." I said, "We're not finished." We filed a civil suit in February. Unpaid rent, 18 months at fair market value of $1,800 per month, came to $32,400. Emotional distress and reputational damage. Costs of legal defense. Sandra added a defamation claim based on the fabricated neighbor's statement and the fraudulent medical documentation submitted in my name to the court. Perry Whitfield reached out with a settlement offer in early March. $15,000. Full release of all claims. I said no. Sandra sent back our counter. Full $32,400 in rent. $40,000 in damages. Total $72,400. My son called me from a number I hadn't blocked yet. He sounded different from the Christmas Eve call. Smaller is the only word for it. Like the air had come out of something. Dad, this is going to bankrupt us. I know. We were trying to help you. We were worried about you living alone. You have to understand that Eleanor's death. Don't, I said. Don't bring her into this. A long pause. We made mistakes, he said. You forged a doctor's signature. You wrote a false statement from a neighbor who didn't write it. You spent 18 months living in my home rent-free while planning to have me declared legally incompetent so you could liquidate my assets. I let that sit. That's not a mistake. That's a plan. I know the difference between a mistake and a plan. I spent 38 years telling the difference. He hung up. The case went to hearing in April. Judge Morrison, a different judge, Civil Division, reviewed the complete record. The fraudulent petition, the suspended doctor, the audio recordings, the manufactured evidence. She awarded $72,400, joint and several liability, full amount. She also referred the case file to the county prosecutor. Separately, the state medical board had already opened a formal investigation into Dr. Marsh's involvement. By June, my son and his wife had begun the process of separating their finances. By July, I received a letter from their attorney indicating they were filing for Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Sandra reviewed it and called me. You'll see some of the judgment, she said. Probably not all of it. They're liquidating what they can. I didn't file that suit for the money, I said. I know, but the criminal referral is still in process. The prosecutor's office called me last week. They're moving forward on the forgery charge. I found a house in April, small Cape Cod, on 2 acres outside of Granville, Ohio. An hour from Columbus, 40 minutes from my sister's daughter, close enough to drive when I wanted company and far enough for the quiet I discovered I needed. The asking price was $313,000. I offered $295,000. They countered at $305,000. I said $298,000, and they took it. I closed on May 8th, picked up the keys on a Wednesday morning, and drove out alone. The property had old oak trees in the back, a small barn that had been converted into a workshop. The previous owner had been converted into a workshop. The previous owner had been a cabinet maker. He'd left his workbench. I walked around the property 3 times before I went inside. Slow circuits. I did the structural assessment automatically. Roof needed work in 2 years, maybe 3. Foundation was solid. The workshop was in better shape than the listing photos suggested. Good bones, as they say. That afternoon I went to the storage unit in Columbus and retrieved the 3 boxes I'd shipped from the UPS store in December. I unpacked them carefully, set Eleanor's photograph on the mantel, put her jewelry in the small safe I'd bought specifically for this house. New combination. Nothing her son could guess. My son sent a letter in June. Handwritten. 3 pages. He said he was sorry. He said his wife had pushed the plan from the beginning, that he had resisted and then gone along and then convinced himself it was for my benefit. He said he understood if I never forgave him. I read it once, put it in a folder, labeled the folder. I didn't respond. In July, the first bankruptcy distribution arrived, a check for $1,847.60. I deposited it, and the same afternoon wrote a check for $2,000 to the Ohio Elder Justice Initiative, an organization that provides legal assistance to seniors facing financial exploitation. I did that with the next 2 distributions as well. The money my son sent me became money that helped someone else's father. In August, my daughter-in-law called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered because I didn't know it was her. I just need you to know, she said, that you destroyed us. You could have talked to us. You could have. I heard the conversation, I said. October. Early morning. You were on the phone with someone you were calling doctor. She went quiet. You drafted a false statement from my neighbor. You filed a fraudulent petition with fabricated medical evidence. I didn't destroy anything. I protected what was mine. I kept my voice even. The way you keep your voice when you're reading a specification aloud on a construction site and you want everyone to hear every word. If the structure collapses, it's not the fault of the engineer who found the flaw. It's the fault of the people who built it wrong. That evening, I'd on my back porch and watched the light change across 2 acres of Ohio farmland. The oak trees had gone gold and amber. My neighbor's sheep were in the far field. It was very quiet. A woodpecker was working at something in the tree line. Steady, methodical. One problem at a time. The criminal case moved forward in the fall. A prosecutor named David Wynn handled the indictment. 2 counts of forgery. 1 count of attempted financial exploitation of an elderly adult. My son was listed as a co-conspirator. His wife was the primary defendant. Sandra called when the indictment came through. "Trial is set for March," she said. "You'll likely be called as a witness." "That's fine." "Robert," she stopped. "Sorry, you never told me. Are you doing okay?" "Actually okay." I thought about that for a moment. The workshop in the barn. I bought a set of hand tools in June and started learning to work with wood. Slowly, nothing structural. Small things. A frame for a photograph. A small shelf for the kitchen. "Yes," I said, "I'm actually okay." I think what people don't understand when they hear a story like this is that the revenge is not the ending. The revenge is just the mechanism, the engineering solution to an immediate structural problem. The ending is something different. The ending is sitting on a back porch in October with a cup of coffee, watching oak trees go gold, knowing that everything within the property line is yours and that you built the arrangement yourself, deliberately, with clear eyes. Eleanor would have said something sharp and funny about all of it, something that would have made me laugh before I was ready to. That's what I miss most, I think. Not her presence exactly, which I feel all the time in all the small ways I've arranged my life since she died. What I miss is her editorial judgment. She would have found exactly the right word for what my son and his wife did, and it would have been so precise that I would have stopped being sad and started being amused, and that would have been better than sad. I don't have her word for it. I just have what happened. I was 67 years old, a retired engineer, a widower of 8 months, and my son decided that what I was a problem to be managed. He was wrong about that. He was wrong in the way that a contractor is wrong when he misreads a load calculation, not a small mistake, a foundational one, and the consequences run all the way through the structure. I sit in my workshop now most mornings. The light comes through the east window and lands on the workbench. I am learning to make joints that hold without fasteners, just the geometry of the wood, shaped so precisely that the pieces support each other. It takes patience. It takes exact measurement. It takes knowing exactly where the weight is going to fall, and preparing accordingly. I find it suits me. If you're watching this and you're in a situation like mine, if someone in your family is treating you like a problem instead of a person, write everything down. Document the dates, the conversations, the evidence. Your mind is not the liability they want you to believe it is. Neither is your age. The only liability I had was trusting too long and too generously. Once I stopped doing that, I knew exactly what to do. I built bridges for 38 years. They don't fall down. Please subscribe and leave a comment telling me what time it is where you are. I read everyone. I've thought a lot about when exactly things went wrong, not between me and my son. I know that answer now, and it's older than I'd like to admit. I mean when the plan went wrong for them. I think it was the moment they chose to treat patience as stupidity. They saw a man who didn't raise his voice at dinner, who passed the bread without commentary, who went to bed at the same time each night, and they read all of that as weakness. That was their miscalculation, not mine. I spent 38 years in civil engineering because I understood something early. The most dangerous structures aren't the ones that look unstable. They're the ones that look fine. They hold weight for years, sometimes decades, and then one day the stress accumulates past the threshold and they fail completely and suddenly. My son thought he was watching a man who was past his usefulness. What he was actually watching was a man running load calculations. What I want to say, and I mean this for anyone watching who is in a similar place, is that intelligence doesn't expire. It changes shape. At 35, I was fast. I could run the numbers in my head and have an answer before the meeting ended. At 67, I'm slower in some ways and considerably more deliberate in others. I make fewer assumptions. I document more. I verify before I act. That's not decline. That's refinement. The people who try to use my age against me didn't understand that the version of me they were underestimating had more experience outthinking problems than they had years on Earth. There's a kind of moral clarity that only comes from being genuinely wronged. Not inconvenienced, wronged. When someone you built your life around decides that your life is an asset they'd like to liquidate, something settles into focus. You stop being confused about what matters. Eleanor always said I had trouble prioritizing. She was right. After all of this, I don't have that problem anymore. The hardest thing wasn't the legal process. Sandra was excellent. The case was solid. The hardest thing was sitting across a dinner table from my son, watching him talk about Christmas plans, watching him smile at me, knowing exactly what he was doing, and choosing not to react. An engineer's discipline. You don't demolish a structure before the drawings are complete. You wait. You prepare. Then you act once, decisively, and you don't need to act again. Consequences are not punishment in the way people mean when they use that word emotionally. They're structural. If you build a floor that cannot bear weight, eventually something heavy walks across it, and it gives way. That's not vengeance. That's physics. My son and his wife built something dishonest, and they stood on it, and it collapsed under them. I didn't push. I simply stopped holding it up. What I carry forward from all of this is not bitterness. I want to be clear about that, because bitterness would mean they still had something of mine. What I carry forward is a workshop in a converted barn in Granville, Ohio, and 2 acres of oak trees, and the understanding that the most important thing a person can protect is not their property. It's their clarity. Keep your mind clear. Keep your records accurate. Keep your own counsel until you know exactly what you're doing. Then do it completely and don't look back. Eleanor would have found one perfect word for all of this. I never found it, but I think she'd be satisfied with how the structure held.